Hello, and welcome back for another ACCA video where in today's recording I'm going to take you through my full tutor analysis part 3 of the ACCA SBL examination June 2025 sitting, going through the pre-scene information for Dearn Shoes Ltd. My name is James, I'm an ACCA qualified member and I love to help out ACCA students around the world pass their examinations just like the students above me, going through my exclusive SBL notes. So if you'd like a copy for yourself, click the link into the description below and you can download a copy to go through with the video. I'm also delighted to say I'm also associated and affiliated with Astranti. They offer mock papers, pre-scene analysis packs, all the things that you need to get 50 plus on your exam, to get it ticked off. And if you click the links down in the description below, you can check those out. Also, for pure transparency on the channel, as always, if you were to purchase anything using those links down below, I'd be entitled to a small percentage which goes to supporting the YouTube channel. So as ever, a massive, huge thank you. I hope the videos are helping. And if you have any questions for me, how we've been getting on in the series so far, leave me a comment down below. I will get back to you and I'll be more than happy to help. Now let's move on to the industry body, industry standard and legislation, a really important section, especially to demonstrate your understanding of the scenario. The first key term to remember for your exam comes in the form of the Luckland Shoe Association, the LSA, and that aims to promote the industry domestically and globally. It provides its members with expertise, support, advice, guidance and insight on a range of relevant topics through its staff, its publications, the network of members and the links to the Luckland government. So just reading between the lines there, you've got elements of a political factor with the government mentioned, and be sure to refer to the full term of the Luckland Shoe Association, LSA, in your exam if it came up in a requirement that it could be applied to. Speaking of things that could be applied to across a variety of different areas, is that there is an accreditation by the Made in Luckland campaign, which is set up by the LSA, which we've just touched on, to provide Luckland manufacturing shoes domestically and internationally, and it indicates that manufacturers have complied with standards regarding the quality and safety of products, labour standards and sustainability guidelines. Accredited manufacturers can use the Made in Luckland MIL mark. And this is all about the 4 stages are actually below on page 3. So remember how we were going through and saying, you know, when they actually make the goods, all the way down to when they're signed off for quality. Those are the areas on page 3 about the different stages they're referring to. And that Made in Luckland MIL, make sure you get that down, because we are told that Dearn Shoes actually has that accredited manufacturer's mark later on in the pre-scene materials for the area of their handcrafted goods for the formal shoes. So make sure you get that down in your notes. Shoe manufacturers, like all businesses in Luckland, must comply with employment, health and safety, consumer protection, competition and data protection legislation. There is a strong system of copyright protection in Luckland as well. Some risk areas definitely to note down there. Also could overlap with some ethical areas and also legal factors from a pestle requirement if the theory was to come up. Manufacturers must carry out a number of legally required health and safety tests on all shoes to ensure the materials used to manufacture them are non-hazardous. Most staff employed in the industry are members, and another key area for you to note down, the National Shoe Union, NSU, which looks after the interests of its members at work, for example, negotiating agreements with employers on pay and conditions. So overlaps with potential ethical areas if you were to bring into account the union in a question, and also a social factor from a pestle analysis point of view. So plenty to get down there in the industry body, standards and legislation. Moving on to now the Dearn Shoes Ltd area and actually the background of the company. I'm surprised I didn't put this further up in the pre-scene materials, but let's get stuck into it now. That Dearn Shoes Ltd, Dearn, was founded nearly 100 years ago, so they're well established, by Dermot Dearn. Over the years, it has built a reputation for reasonably priced, well-made shoes for adults and children. It was one of the first organisations to be awarded that MIL mark we've just touched on for its formal type of shoe on there. So that is the handcrafted formal type of shoe. So got good brand image, well-established organisation, the key name of Dermot to get down there, and it's the only place in the pre-seed notes that Dermot has been mentioned. Now the next bit is a key strategy change that you need to get your head around ahead of your exam. So until 15 years ago, all of Dearn's manufacturing was actually based in a town called Leyen in the southwest of Lutland. At that point, the company decided to transfer most of its manufacturing to the country of Totland. You'll see I put it in a different colour there, retaining one small factory in Lena to take advantage of the significantly lower production costs. So we've touched on this earlier on in the actual pre-seed materials. And this is where the next key actual aspect for you to get down is EXCO Limited, or EXCO, one of Totland's largest actual shoe manufacturers that produces shoes for Dearn in that country. Dearn's head office, the small factory, and its warehouse are still in Leyen, so that is based in Lutland. It is one of the main employers in that particular area. So key aspects for you to get your head around and understanding the scenario there. Be sure to not mix up the names, locations, that's why I've colour coordinated it. And you'll see that we've got DT there as well, so shipping from Totland to Dearn's warehouse, so getting the products in from overseas from Totland to Dearn in Lutland is carried out by DT Global Transport on there, so they provide a very good service we'll come on to on page 8. Now most of Dearn's shoes are mass produced by EXCO. So its only formal shoes are handcrafted in Lutland's factory. Its shoes are sold throughout Lutland directly to customers via its 75 branded retail outlets and its website. It does not export any of its production. So again, straight away there, you've got a SWOT analysis opportunity. You've already got a company in DT Global Transport who provide a good service who we could actually use. So that could be a recommendation for exports. Maybe we could bring those on board. And now we're getting into, well, we've got this Dearn Shoes Limited. What is the actual ownership like? Well, the Dearn shares are actually split, as you can see below. So they have some founding family of 70%. So that relates to, as we saw above, for Dermot. So Dermot was part of the founding family. We're not told, however, how many of the people in the founding family own the shares. We're only told the percentage. The directors, as you can see on the right hand side, own 15% of the organisation, employment own 10%, and there are some other shareholders at 5%. Now, key aspects that link into areas like agency theory, as you can see from my notes, is that although the majority of the shares in Dearn are owned by the founder's family, none of the family are on the board or have any involvement in the management of the company on a day-to-day basis. So that board and organisational structure you can see on the right hand side, they are in charge in how Dearn operates. Nothing to do with the founding family. Dearn is not listed on the Lutland Stock Exchange, but governance arrangements are consistent with good corporate governance. And if something about corporate governance was to come up, if you were to have a look on page 9, that is where the executive chair is accountable for that area. And the fact they even said it's not listed, that is where if they were to become listed, they would have to hit corporate governance standards in place because of the nature of the business with it now being listed. They talk about it again in the pre-seed materials. As a non-listed company, the directors have made the decision not to have an audit, nomination and remuneration committee. There is an internal audit team which reports to the Chief Financial Officer, the CFO. Now, what did I read between the lines on here? So the CFO roles are actually on page 9, so you can see the breakdowns on there. And Dearn actually has a revenue, we will find out later on page 12, of $352.5 million. So it actually potentially has the capacity to actually become a listed organisation. And therefore, if that was to happen, they would need an audit, they would need a nomination committee, and they would need a remuneration committee. And we'll see later on page 9, check it out now if you've already downloaded these notes. It sounds like the directors are pretty comfortable with the way that things are working out. They've been at the organisation for about 20 years, and they don't like change or to challenge what is actually going on. But when you read through the pre-seed materials, you kind of think, well, if Dearn doesn't actually change their strategy, is the organisation going to be sustainable in the long run? So plenty to discuss, especially from a SWOT, PESTEL and Porter's analysis point of view. We now come up to some key stakeholders, and I've also put up there Mendelow's matrix model could be applied here as to you've got different levels of power and different levels of interest for the different stakeholder groups, and therefore we might need to allocate them either to being keeping them satisfied, are they key players, minimal effort, or keeping them informed. So some of the key stakeholders that are identified in the preceding materials, so both internal and external stakeholders that could be used in a form of analysis on the exam day, setting a requirement, are the actual shareholders. We've just touched on those in the previous page. The staff, head office, factory, warehouse staff, retail outlets, the customers, third-party manufacturer, so that's EXCO, they're based in Totland, distribution partner, that's DT Global Transport, DT, suppliers, bank, the trade union, and the Luckland Shoe Association. So make sure you've got a note down of all of those, and maybe what to do before your exam is have some sort of pros and cons, or break them down into things that you would say about those different stakeholder groups if it was to be tested. There are high levels of loyalty, commitment and satisfaction among Dearn staff, and the staff turnover is low, which is very good. It means there isn't a lot of people leaving, and it is not uncommon for several generations of the same family to have worked in Dearn. So we have, if you go down to page 12, consistent staff satisfaction ratings, really, really good, but you could argue this is to their disadvantage about not be willing to pivot and to change strategy and to adopt to the changes in the marketplace, like the new fashion trends and things like ethical resourcing of the shoes and materials that we've already looked at. The relationship between Dearn and EXCO was very positive. Now this is a really key point for you and key aspect you'll see in your notes to refer back to and get down in your notes. But over the last 2 years, there have been a growing number of issues with the quality of the output from its factories. Quality checks carried out in Luckland have highlighted poor production quality, and the number of returns from customers due to faulty shoes produced by EXCO has been slowly rising. Delays in the dispatch of orders from EXCO have also been increasing. Remember, customers will buy from Dearn Shoes because, as we can see on the left-hand side, they've got that reputation as being reasonably priced, well-made shoes, and catering for all people on there. And one of the things that hasn't been going well is that quality. Shipping between Totland and Dearn's warehouse in Lena is provided by DT Services. We've seen those in the key stakeholders, and they're the shipping carrier provider, and they have actually been excellent. So they could actually use DT for some export sales, and DT Travel Transport, it's worth stating if it comes up in an answer, if it comes up in a requirement, sorry, that they've been no problem. They're not part of the problem. They could be a potential solution on that. But this will all affect the brand reputation, and especially when the market growth is going to be slowing down, the quality has to still be there, or customers will go elsewhere to competitors. In terms of the board and organisational structure now, we're given on the right hand side the structure of Dearn's board and their main responsibility areas as well. Now in terms of this diagram you can see on the screen, key thing to note down, in fact there is quite a lot, but we'll get onto it first. There are no names provided for any of these positions at all, so we could get some on the day, or if you actually see in a requirement a particular area, you've got to know exactly what they do and where they are accountable. Now in terms of the non-executive directors, we're not told anything about their experience, we're not told anything about their expertise, and we're not told anything about if there is a familiarity threat. Maybe they've been on the board for a significant number of years, especially when we're told information that lots of staff like to stay for a prolonged period of time. So all these sort of things link into it, with the final thing being, remember how we saw on page 7 that Dearn is not listed? Well, if it was to become listed, we need, for compliance with corporate governance standards, is that at least half of the board have to be non-executive directors of listed organisations. And as you can see at the moment, we don't currently have on there 50-50 split. So again, it is completely a who knows if it could be tested, but a point worth noting anyway in your notes. With the final part on here being some other models and frameworks, so you can see the Johnson, Scholes and Whittington model at the bottom. I've got down that it could be applied or tested because it links into strategic management and evaluating strategic options. So that key criteria areas of is it suitable, is it feasible, and is it acceptable? And even I'm guessing as I say this, you're probably there going, I think that could be applied. That's got a lot to say. And the ACCA SBL team do particularly like the 6 capitals of integrated reporting, those being financial, manufactured, intellectual, human, social and relationship, and natural capital. So this is all on the basis that these capitals are the basis of an organization's value creation and discuss the usefulness of this information to stakeholders. Again, plenty of legs on there to be tested come the exam day, so make sure you've got those models noted down. And that nicely brings us to the end of our part 3 of the full tutor analysis. If you'd like a copy of my exclusive notes, click the link in the description of this video. You can have a copy to go through the rest of the videos, and also check out those links for the Astranti mock papers and pre-scene analysis packs. They're definitely going to help to get you the 50+. So I'll see you on the other side now for part 4. Thank you very much. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.